meeting of the City Council Public Financing Authority to order. Clerk, can you please take the roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Mosier?
Here.
Councilmember Bolton?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Burns?
Here.
Mayor Vandermark?
Here.
Councilmember Strickland has not yet arrived. Councilmember McKeon?
Here.
Councilmember Kalmick?
Here.
All present.
Council member comments. Does anyone have any comments?
I do. Thank you. So yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which the city of Huntington Beach may or may not recognize. I'm completely baffled by our most recent attempt, ham-handed attempt to eliminate our official recognition of the LGBTQ+ community by our city through the device of eliminating the recognition of all heritage months. I wonder what Dr. King would say about what's happening in Huntington Beach in the year 2024, 95 years after his birth. Would he still say that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice? Many people associate that quote with Dr. King, but he actually drew it from an early 19th century theologian and scholar named Theodore Parker. To me, the interesting thing about Parker was that he focused less on religious dogma and more on what he called man's intuitive knowledge of God, or moral truths. Not surprisingly, he opposed slavery at a time when some people were using the Christian Bible to justify slavery. His full quote from the year 1858 is, I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure that it bends toward justice. I find it hard to believe that people of good conscience would do things that feel like sitting in judgment of or trying to erase segments of this community. I do not think that such an attitude truly represents our city, the city with the laid-back surfer vibe. Now that this matter has been squarely placed before our public conscience, I hope the city's residents show the content of their character when the opportunity presents itself. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments?
I do. I just want to say shout out to the Chamber of Commerce. They had their Best of HB Awards this last weekend. Congratulations to all those that won. And I want to just say that the city of Huntington Beach Civic Center was closed yesterday in honor of Martin Luther King, a great man, and just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, now we'll move on to announcement of supplemental communications. Do we have any supplemental communications?
Not for this portion of the meeting, no.
Do we have any public comments?
No one signed up to speak.
Okay. So at this point, we're moving on to study session. Staff, could you please introduce your report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Alvin Papa. I am the Deputy Director of Public Works here at the City of Huntington Beach. I help manage the water and sewer utility, which is a division within the Public Works Department. Supported by me today is Steve Gagnon from Raftelis, Anthony Losky from RDN, and then also Chao Vu, Public Works Director. So today I'll be talking about the water and wastewater rates. This is something that we review every 5 years, and a lot of the proposed changes that are forthcoming will be shared in the presentation today, along with the Prop 218 process. So with regards to our infrastructure, we have 53,000 metered connections. For water, we have 630 miles of water pipe and 9 active water wells. On the sewer side, we have 360 miles of sewer pipe, and we have 27 lift stations. So this is a lot of infrastructure that we have, that we manage and maintain within the Public Works Department. With regards to master plans and rate studies, we have a water master plan and a sewer master plan. that forecasts and plans into the future with regards to the capital improvement projects that are needed in the coming years to ensure that we can continue to provide reliable water and a reliable sewer system. The photo that you see there, that's a picture of our utilities team. They're the people that operate and maintain our facilities on a daily basis. And then on the lower left-hand corner is a copy of the last water rate study that we did back in 2019. As I mentioned, this is something that we do every 5 years. For the water rate study, we look at the cost of delivering the service. We look at the revenues that are being collected. And then as part of the rate study, we recommend any adjustments that are needed to ensure that we can take care of our infrastructure appropriately. On this slide, I want to talk about some of the key water infrastructure projects that we have that were identified in the master plan. The number one priority right now are the water wells. We have 9 water wells in the city. 6 of them are approaching 50 years old. And those wells need to start being replaced, or it's going to cost the city money in the long run. For every well that goes down, it's going to cost the city an additional $2 million a year in water purchase cost. With regards to some of the other projects, aging pipe replacement, that's to the tune of $36 million. We currently replace about 1 mile of pipe per year. We really need to be doing 6 miles of pipe per year long term. We have a corrosion control project for our import feeders. So this is for the water that comes in from the Colorado River and the State Water Project. Those lines are old, and we need to spend some money to make sure that they continue to run well. Our Peck Reservoir, which is our largest reservoir at 17 million gallons, it needs a roof that needs to be replaced. We were actually supposed to replace this a couple of years ago, but we did a design study that told us we had a couple more years, so we opted to push that out a little bit later. And then on-site chlorine and fluoride generation. This is to produce chlorine and fluoride on-site, which will help make a safer and more reliable water system for us. On the sewer side, we have 27 lift stations in the city. Our goal is to replace 1 sewer lift station every 2 years. This is going to ensure that the stations are up to date, that they have the well capacity, and helps prevent sewer spills. We have to replace aging pipe that's cracked. A lot of the city was built in the 1960s. Most of the infrastructure is around 50 years old, and just everything's coming to head almost all at the same time. So we've got a lot of pipe replacement to do, and a lot of sewer infrastructure repair. Overall, on the water projects, we had about $180 million of water projects that need to be built per our sewer master plan. And then on the sewer side, it's $75 million of projects that need to be built. So this is it's a lot of infrastructure. So how do we pay for all these projects and all this operations and maintenance service? Well, the rates that we collect from the residents through their water and sewer bill, that money goes into an enterprise fund. That fund is a restricted fund that can only be used to pay for water and sewer. So we can't take that money and use it to go upgrade a park. And also, one thing I want to note is that the fees that we do collect, customers pay for the proportion of what they use, and that's required per Prop 218 regulations. And so with regards to the water and sewer rate study, as I mentioned, we do this every 5 years. We look at the cost of delivering the service. We look at the revenues that we're collecting. And then within the rate study, we show what the proposed adjustments look like. Ultimately, our goals are long-term sustainability, trying to keep rates affordable, and then we also want to make sure that customers are paying the appropriate amount. So we have Raftelis and we have RDN. So they've helped us do the rate study this year, and ultimately, after we completed this whole exercise, the proposed rates that you're going to be seeing forthcoming still keep us amongst the lowest in Orange County. So some of the major drivers in our analysis are rising construction costs. As many of you see in some of the council actions that come forward, a lot of the bids that we put out for construction are coming in much higher. It's just the nature of doing business. When these rates were last adopted in 2019, it was back before the pandemic began. Ever since the pandemic happened, there's been a lot of shift in our economy and the way business is done. So, inflation has been a huge factor. The way commerce and logistics operate has changed. Electricity has gone up significantly, and the price of purchasing equipment has gone up. And just overall, we're seeing across the board large price increases. And, bottom line is we need more revenue in order to balance our budget and to pay for the projects to make sure that our infrastructure continues to operate reliably. On this slide are some of the potential consequences. That could happen if we don't appropriately fund our water and sewer infrastructure. Really, one thing we want to remind our residents is that water and sewer is a 24/7 operation. A lot of times we don't see it underground, but it's relied upon to work at all times of the day. If we have unreliable water, we can have reduced water pressure, and then we can have safety challenges, such as if a fire were to occur, we wouldn't have the pressure to fight that fire. If we have a sewer spill, it would contaminate our beaches and it endangers the public health and safety of our residents. And then ultimately, if we don't comply, then we could be charged fines and even be litigated against. So it really is important for us to ensure that we have adequate funds to prevent any of these things from happening, and to also ensure that we have adequate reserves to prevent against emergencies. On this slide, you'll see the reserve targets for fiscal year 2024. As part of this rate study, we didn't modify any of this. This is what we've been doing for the past 20 years. The only thing we're doing is just updating the numbers based on today's dollars. These reserve targets are something that's approved by council every year. It's included in the budget document, and I think in this year's budget, it's on pages 93 and 94, 97 and 98, I'm sorry, of this year's budget document, so it'll be included as part of the budget. And then for water, it's about a $35 million reserve target currently, and $11 million for sewer. And so now into the water discussion. As I mentioned, Steve Gagnon from Raftellus is here today. Raftellus has done our last 3 rate studies, so for the past 15 years. They know Huntington Beach. They understand the needs of our residents. And they also do a lot of water rate studies throughout LA and Orange County. So with regards to our water rates, there are 4 different components. There's a commodity rate, which is basically the water that residents use. We take the cost that we pay from the Metropolitan Water District and the Orange County Water District. We take those costs, we break it down into what it costs for each resident, and that cost gets passed through to the resident based on what's actually charged. There is no markup. The next part of the water rates are the fixed meter charge. So this is a charge that's based on the size of the meter, and it funds the daily operations and maintenance of the system. The third component is a capital charge. This funds the capital improvement projects, many of which are included in our master plan. And then lastly, a private fire line fee. So this covers all the costs of providing fire protection. It's everything except the cost of actually fighting the fire, which is what the fire department does. This slide you see here just shows what our CIP project expenditures look like over the next 5 years. We looked at various different categories: the cost to produce the water, the replacement costs, any studies needed, and then security and corrosion control. The biggest spend in those first couple of years are to build those 3 wells and to also cover the reservoir roof and the on-site chlorine generation. And then the next largest, what you see there in orange, is the replacement of the old pipe that's something that's going to continue now and into the future. So overall, there's a large immediate need, and then you'll see us start slowing down towards the end of the study. This is a picture of the status quo condition. So this is essentially a do-nothing scenario. The orange represents our reserve targets, and the blue represents our fund balance. If we do nothing, we're going to run out of reserves within 3 years, and we'll be in the negative. So we were aware of this. We understood that this was something that was forthcoming, which is the reason why we hired Raftelis. So Raftelis took a look at our cash flow. They looked at our revenues, and they tried to find a modest amount of adjustment to our rate to help develop a scenario that would meet all our operational needs and help build the projects that we needed to build over the next couple of years. Traditionally, City of Huntington Beach is operated on a pay-go process. So we looked at managing our cash flow cash only. So there is no debt service included as part of this plan. So you'll see the first 3 years with that dark blue, we'll be spending down some of the reserves. And then after that, we'll start rebuilding our reserves. And at the end of the 5-year period, the goal is to hit our reserve target. And this is similar to the 2 slides ago with the new proposed water rates. You see that we're currently at a little bit above our reserve targets now. We'll be spending our reserves down slowly, and then at the end of a couple of years, we'll be building it back, and then we'll be back to our reserve target at the end of the study period, which would be 2029. And you will notice that the reserve target is a little bit higher from 2024, but that's because the reserve changes, it changes over time. And so this is a comparison of the fixed O&M charge. So this is the meter fee that pays for those daily operations. This shows what it would look like month by month. This is the first year only of a 5-year rate resolution. So this is the meter fee. There is no difference between commercial and residential. Everybody pays the same, and it's all based on meter size. And this is per the American Water Works Association standard. There's a M1 manual that tells our staff in the industry how this should be done. And so I would say 73% of our customers are single-family residential. That falls within that 3/4-inch meter size, so that top line there. And the difference for them would be about $1 a month. The next slide you see here is the fixed capital charge. The fixed capital charge pays for all the CIP projects. These are all those projects in the master plan. It's also based on meter size, and there is no difference between residential and commercial. This is a table of the third component, the fire service line fee. The City of Huntington Beach is a Class 1 fire system, so the fees that we collect here help ensure that we maintain that rating and help ensure that we provide adequate fire protection. And then lastly, the water rates. So 85% of our groundwater comes from the Orange County Water District, and that's the water that we pump out of the ground from our water wells. And the Metropolitan Water District of Orange County, we import 15% of our water from them. So the cost that we use to pay for both of those entities, we take those costs, bring them together, and then we put it into these rates, which are based on CCF. So it's one customer billing unit. That stands for 100 cubic feet or 728 gallons. And so, ultimately, looking at these costs, at $2.68 a gallon, $2.68 a customer billing unit, the actual cost of a gallon is 0.33 cents. So for one For 1 penny, you can get 3 gallons of water, compared to a bottle of water, which costs like $2 or something nowadays. And so this is a survey that Raftellus did for us of some comparable cities in Orange County. We did not include special districts kind of in this survey, but we are currently one of the lowest in Orange County, and even after the rate changes, we'll continue to be amongst the lowest. And we'll, we hope to remain affordable now and into the future. Now on to the wastewater discussion. As I mentioned, Anthony Olowski from RDN is here with us. RDN has performed rate studies for over 40 plus years, and we're glad to have them partnering with us on this project. So with regards to sewer rate, it differs from the water rate in that there's only one flat fee for the sewer rate. There are 5 different customer categories, and these are the same customer categories that we've been using since 2001, so about 23 years. It hasn't changed, and all we've done is just adjust the pricing and the numbers. This is what our CIP projects would look like. It's not as smooth as the water one because we do have some large expenditures in the first 2 years. We have 2 sewer pump stations that were supposed to be delivered a couple of years ago. The challenge with those pump stations is there were some odor issues, so engineering had to pause those projects, figure out some solutions to those odor issues, and then move those projects forward. So this is a backlog of projects that you're seeing that's coming forward. And then the other large spend in this first couple of years is we have restrooms along the beach path. There are 4 freestanding restrooms that are currently connected to septic. It's an $8 million project, and the plan is to take those pump stations or take those bathrooms off of septic and connect it to our wastewater collection system. And this is going to help greatly reduce the potential for a sewer spill at our beaches. And then after we deliver those projects, you'll see our CIP projects stabilize to about $6 million per year is what we're anticipating. Similar to water, here's a sewer cash flow analysis. You see the big spend the first 2 years. We're going to spend a lot of the reserves the first 2 years, and that was planned and intentional. And then after the first 2 years, we're going to start working back to build back our reserves, and at the end of the 5-year period to hit our reserve targets. With regards to our cost of service, RDN looked at all of the customer service accounts. I think there are 52,000 customer service accounts. They reviewed the sewer flow, and they made adjustments based on proportion. And then so the largest change here is commercial. Commercial is going from 12% previous use to 19%, and that's because there's been a change in uses over the years, and there's also been a lot of water conservation efforts over the years. So just the amount of water that people are using are changing in proportion, and so the sewer rates that we have reflect those changes. Here's what the fund balance looks like. You see that there's just a large spend, and then it's going to take us a couple of years to get back to our reserve target, but we expect to be back there by 2029. And here's what it looks like for our sewer rates. Again, same categories for the past 20 years. The biggest change is in the commercial, where we did the adjustment based on their proportional usage. And this is a similar sewer rate survey. Currently, we're in the middle when compared to the rest of the county, and after the proposed rates are implemented, we expect to stay still near the middle. Here's a copy of the residential bill impact of what a customer would pay. Currently, residents pay about $62 a month for a single-family residence, and at the end of the first year, we can expect a $6 increase. And so this is what it will look like the first year. As part of the Prop 218 hearing, there's a 5-year rate resolution that's passed. There's a couple of tables here that shows what that looks like over 5 years. This is the commodity rate. Everything on this table is estimated based on the data that we have now from Orange County Water District and MoDOC. So we've done our best to estimate it, but when we actually get into that fiscal year, these numbers will be adjusted slightly to reflect the actual rates that are set by OCWD and MoDOC at that time. And all of this information is going to be included in the Prop 218 notice that will go out to the residents. This is a copy of the fixed O&M schedule. So all of this accounts for future inflation. Raftellus has estimated the future inflation, and they've baked that into the rates long-term. Same thing for our fixed capital charge. This was what it looks like for the fixed capital charge and the private fire service fee. We also have the 5-year sewer rate schedule. So all these 5 tables are going to be included in the Prop 218 notice that goes out to residents. After this study session, we have a draft of the Prop 218. That's going to be put together in a memo that's going to give City Council a summary of everything that we've done, everything we propose to do, and that'll go out to the City Council, and you guys will have that for your own review before anything goes out to the public for review. And so what are the next steps? So this is the biggest part of the presentation, which is the public hearing and the rate change process. So as part of the Prop 218 process, we have to mail notices to all property owners. In Huntington Beach, historically, we've mailed it to all the property owners and to also the tenants within those properties. So we have to do this a minimum of 45 days before we have the public hearing. So for us, based on our schedule, we anticipate doing that before the end of 2024. And in order for City Council to approve the rate changes, we have to make sure that there is not a majority protest. So there cannot be more than 50% plus 1 in written protests against the fees. Otherwise, the fee changes cannot be implemented. As part of that procedure, if approved, we will pass a rate resolution as part of that public hearing. Currently, the schedule is April 16th is what we have on the calendar. Second reading will be on May 7th. Then shortly after that, if approved, we'll follow up with a memo to City Council with what the rates will be and letting you guys know that the rates are planned to be effective on July 1st. And so we also do want to mention that we did have 2 open houses, one in November and one in December, to share information about our rates, what the rates pay for, and we did these open houses over at the Murdy Community Center and over at the Senior Center. We also advertised on social media, on Facebook, on Surf City Break. And so we have got the word out, and we do plan on doing significant outreach once the Prop 218 notice goes out. So we plan on using bill inserts, posting on the city website, and using all our social media channels. And everything will be bilingual. And so that concludes my presentation. And so myself and the rest of the team are here to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Papa, for all the work that you guys have done on this study. It's clear that you've put a lot into it. I just have a couple of clarifications that I want to make sure I understand things. So let me ask first about slide 32. So I think that was the sample residential bill.
Yes.
So is that for the first, that representation is just for what it might look like for the first year after, if these rates went into effect?
Yes.
Is it possible for you to prepare something like that for the succeeding years, just so that we have a sense for what the total impact would be?
Yes, absolutely. We have something that we plan on preparing, and we'll be providing it to City Council as part of the memo that goes out shortly after this study session.
Okay, thanks. And then my next question is on slide 25, and that is, I think it's the wastewater charges. I want to go back to that. So if I understand your presentation correctly, you said the wastewater charges are the same for everyone? Let's see, let me make sure I'm going back to the right one. Is that right? Wastewater charges are the same for everyone? Did I hear that correctly, or maybe I didn't hear it?
The wastewater charges are based on customer class.
Okay,
And so within the rate study, there's a table that shows how rates are apportioned. In short, for single-family residential, multifamily residential, and commercial, there's something called equivalent dwelling units, which is something that we use it's an estimate based on flow. And then for the educational institutions, K through 7? I'm sorry. K through,
yeah,
I
you have
don't
K
have
through
kids
8, yeah.
and high school.
Yeah.
It's based on average daily attendance. So the rates differ based on the category.
Okay, thank you, then I misunderstood what you were saying. So the multifamily, their rate is 910 currently, and single family is 1098. So I'm
Yes.
reading that correctly. Okay, thanks. And then one final question is the reserve targets on slide 12. Just curious how those are developed. Is there an industry standard or a best practice or something like that for what we set as a reserve target?
Yeah, so these reserve targets are the same targets we've been using for the past 20 years. So a lot of times there are industry standards. I think some cities, at their own discretion, can deliberate on what works best for their city. We haven't changed anything here. All we did was just use what historically Huntington Beach has used. And so it's been working well for us. And I think, Chow, do you have something?
For the water fund, it's 25% of the operating budget. For the water master plan, 507, it's 150% of the annual 5-year CIP. So that's the formula we use to calculate reserve.
But that's just based on, that's historically what we've done. And
Yes.
so not necessarily, there's not necessarily some body out there that's telling people that, oh, here's a,
Is the
rate.
industry 100% about?
So I'll just say that 3 months of O&M is very common with a lot of my clients. For the capital reserve, 100% of average 5-year CIP is very common. And then emergency reserves are less common, but we think it's a very good idea to have an emergency reserve so you're prepared. And it is common to have the cost of one of your critical assets if it goes down, which is what you have here, is one well. Okay. So I'd say just on the capital reserve, you're just a hair higher, but that's not to say that you're wrong.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Does anyone else have? Councilmember Kalnick.
So our water rates are determined on usage, right? And we've had historical droughts where, unfortunately, for water providers like us, we ask people to use less water, and therefore we have less revenue. What type of drought modeling have we put into these numbers for going forward that we're likely to see kind of this boom-bust cycle with weather now?
I'll let you answer that, Steve.
Well, we didn't calculate what's known as drought rates, which some agencies have, which is when if a certain district or city enters a certain drought stage, you have the ability to enact a drought rate. We don't have that, but I would say that something that is common for water districts or water utilities is a rate stabilization reserve. If your revenue decreases during a drought, you can pull from that rate stabilization reserve. Now, while you still don't have a formal rate stabilization reserve, I would say you're well reserved compared to a lot of cities, and I think you could pull from your reserves. But in terms of modeling a decrease in water use, we have the same exact water use as fiscal year 22.
Okay. I'm just saying, like, if the state, I mean, what about 2019? 2019, 20-ish. Yeah, when was effectively like when we were asked to curtail water usage like pretty precipitously. And maybe that was 2017. I don't know, whenever I pulled my lawn out.
Yeah, I can jump in a little bit. Initially, there was a thought about looking at something with regards to, drought resiliency within the rate. But when we went through this last drought exercise, what was it, 2 years ago, and our water conservation team, they put out the message for residents to conserve water, and we had a target. When we had that presentation and we did some outreach, after that whole effort, we were able to save 10% of water, I think within the first 1 or 2 months. And I think the governor said to save between 10 to 20%. So we were one of the first cities to hit the target, and we did pretty good through the overall effort. So I think at this time, I think if we're in a situation where we need to call the residents to reduce and pull it in our, look into our water shortage contingency plan and implement some measures, we feel that we could weather pretty successfully. But we could look at something drought related in the next cycle.
Right. I mean, my question was more of the income to meet revenue targets, not necessarily our ability. I mean, we came together. We've been pretty good at cutting water usage when needed, but it's really more of the how are we going to hit some of these? Like we're going to dip down into reserves and we're going to build them back up, but in 2.5 years, say drought kicks in, we are asked to cut 25%. I'm assuming that's 25% of our water usage budget is off.
Well, it'd be a
But that
little
sounds-
less than that because you have a fixed charge, so you have a certain amount of fixed revenue coming in.
Sure.
But just to give you a little bit more detail, in fiscal year '21, you sold 11 million HCF of water. In fiscal year '22, you sold 10.6 million HCF of water. So we're modeling it as if you will sell 10.6. So there is a little bit of a buffer, 3% decrease in water use, of a buffer there in water sales.
Okay.
Councilmember Kalnick,
Yeah.
maybe I'll just jump in here. And I think what he just pointed out is we have a fixed fee, that's the meter fee for fixed costs. And so that will be maintained even if people use less water.
Because our
And that
water
commodity
usage
rate
is a
for
pass-through.
adjustable costs.
Okay.
Now, maybe if it was 25% or more, that might be a problem, but the cost, the variable costs will vary, and that fixed fee should cover most of the fixed costs.
Okay.
Except on extreme ends.
Okay, and then, which leads me to the next question, which is tiered rates. I know some other water districts have tiered rates where you're charged more for more water usage. Are we not there yet? Are we there yet? I know we have like a disparate socioeconomic clientele with it throughout the city. And obviously this affects everybody equally based on, effective water usage, but the fixed charges affect those that have fewer resources more than those that have more resources. So I guess there's a cost recovery discussion and a Prop 218 discussion I think San Juan Capistrano got into several years ago, but now I've seen that other agencies have tiered water rates. So was that something that we evaluated, or is that something for the future, or just doesn't fit for Huntington Beach?
So about 10 years ago, the city considered tiered rates, and the council directed staff not to do them, and we haven't looked at them at this point in time.
Okay. But they're still legal. It's a tool in our tool
If
belt.
there's restructuring, actually, I'd ask the consultant if.
We do a lot of tiered rates, and we believe they're legal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Just
And-
one more thing, your fixed revenue is 45% of your revenue. So during a drought, you would still get at least 45% of your revenue.
Okay. And which leads me into, so none of this includes stormwater though, right? This was just sewer and water. We still have a large issue with stormwater we have to deal with as well. And then would that be a future Prop 218 discussion from the same group of folks, or is that a whole different ball of wax?
The stormwater rates are not included as part of this study.
Okay, but do we have stormwater rates?
No.
Okay.
It's funded by general fund and budgeted as part of the city's budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Moser.
Thank you very much for your presentation. With regards to the outreach, I know you've already done some and have talked about the Prop 218 outreach that will happen as well. Oh, thank you. And we'll include the Prop 218 outreach as well. And you mentioned that for residents, that the letters would go out, and property owners and tenants. Does that also include commercial outreach or commercial property owners?
Yeah, we plan on doing outreach. I think with the commercial property owners, we can look at a model, maybe reaching out to downtown, the Downtown Association, and we'll look at it. We haven't planned anything specifically, but it's something that, based on your comments, something that we can take in, and we'll do something.
Yeah, just because I know we looked at the single-family resident version of what will happen, but with the wastewater rate comparison on the commercial side, it goes up about 100% from the current to the proposed. So
Yes.
I don't know what that actually looks like for a commercial property owner, but it looked a little bit more impactful.
Yeah, so we actually created that slide in anticipation of this question. So this slide you see here is what it would look like for a commercial property owner. So typically, if you're a commercial property owner with a 2-inch meter, typically your bill would be about $336. So you can expect your bill to go up to $400 a month.
Okay.
And this is basically ensuring that they're paying the proportional share of what's actually being used based on their flow.
Great. I just hope we have, like you were talking about, a way to be able to outreach to them as well.
Yeah, and we'll do that, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to closed session announcements. Including in closed session, we'll be in conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6, agency designated representatives, Eric Parra, interim city manager, also in attendance, Teresa St. Peter, interim director of human resources, Travis Hopkins, assistant city manager, Michael E. Gates, city attorney, and Sunny Hahn, chief financial officer. Employee organization is the Huntington Beach Firefighters Association. Do I have a motion and a second to go to recess? Motion. We will now go to closed session.